Thanks for joining me today. Let's talk about my NHL 2020 Western Conference playing around predictions. Now, before we get started, I just want to ask you to please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, which will alert you when my next video comes out, which will be about my Eastern Conference playing around predictions. Now, before we jump all in here, I just wanted to make a little asterisk to say that I've already done some NHL playoff series previews in which I dive deep into the numbers, amongst other things. So you can find that in my playlist under NHL playoff series previews. But I'll also put up links during each of these matchups that you can click on at your leisure as well. What I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be going quickly over each team and who I think is going to win. Now, let's start off with Edmonton versus Chicago. Positionally, the goaltending, I'm giving the edge here ever so slightly to Chicago. It changed somewhat because Corey Crawford did have COVID-19. He recovered. He's back with the team, but maybe he missed out on some of that practice time. He still had great numbers this season, save percentage-wise, and has a ton of playoff experience, as we all know. Now, the defense, I kind of split this. There's no winner here. I know that sounds weird because Chicago usually has a runway that goes from center ice all the way down to the front of their net, but they do have better plus-minus numbers than Edmonton in that category, and they have slightly more points as well from their D-core on top of that. Now, forward-wise, that's an all Oilers, really. No question or doubts about that. Not to mention they got some winger depth during the trade deadline. More on that in a second. Special teams, that's all Edmonton as well. Unless you've been hiding under a rock or something, they have the number 1 power play and the number 2 penalty kill in the league. Chicago cannot take any penalties. Coaching, I'm also giving the edge to Tippett and the Oilers, even though he hasn't coached before this season in quite some time, not to mention the playoffs. I want to say 2012-ish, somewhere around there. But Chicago's coach, Coylton? I can never pronounce that properly. He doesn't have any. Now, I did have a players to watch category for each team that I want to go over here, as well as the dark horse. Starting with Edmonton, players to watch, James Neal. He started off really well till the season and then tailed off. He had 19 goals this season. He's got to pot in some help. You know what I mean. Yamamoto, he only played 27 games, but he looked terrific in the top 6. And Cassian, just because he was born to play in the playoffs. That sandpaper-like personality and play is fun to watch. The dark horse here, I wanted to give it to the trade line acquisitions of Tyler Ennis and Anis Theo. But I'm going to say Mike Smith. Now, Koskinen has had much better numbers than him during the season, 917 as opposed to a 902, but Smith has all the playoff experience. Koskinen has none, and Smith was Calgary's MVP in net last year. Don't forget that. So if he doesn't start, if Koskinen sneezes in the wrong direction, I look for Smith to jump in there. Now for Chicago, under players to watch, I mean, pick a number, really. There's so many. Dominic Kubalik, who came out of nowhere for international play and had 30 goals this season. He's one. He'll be playing his first playoffs, as well as right shot defenseman, 19-year-old Adam Boqvist. Be curious to see how he handles this. Dylan Strome. If Chicago wants any sniff of a chance in this series, their second-line center has got to play more like he did last season for them. Not to mention DeBrincat. Calvin DeHaan's coming back from a shoulder surgery. He should help stabilize their defense as well. And, of course, Corey Crawford, who I already mentioned. My dark horse for the Blackhawks is Alex Nylander. I've been hearing he's been looking really good so far in these scrimmages and warm-ups leading up in the past few weeks. Now, who do I think is going to win this one? Obviously, it's Edmonton. I don't see Chicago coming close, although they did take 3 of the 4 games that they played during the regular season. But hey, it's a total different animal now, isn't it? Now, let's talk about Calgary versus Winnipeg, starting with the goalie I got to give that edge to Winnipeg. Hellebuck just had a terrific season with a 922 save percentage. Lots of playoff experience there too. Defense-wise, it's kind of split as well. You think that Calgary would have the advantage here, especially after Winnipeg lost players in the offseason like Myers, Bufflin, and Trouba, but Calgary has the Jets, have a much better plus minus than Calgary does from the D-core, and they have a smidgen more in points as well. That doesn't mean to say that Calgary obviously has a much higher ceiling, at least when it comes to the offense from their defense. Forward-wise, I'm giving the edge here to Winnipeg as well. Their top five are just so good, and Monahan and Goudreau just didn't have good seasons, and they kind of disappeared last year's playoffs too. Special teams, that's all Calgary actually during the regular season. They were a little bit better on the power play than Winnipeg, and a lot better on the penalty kill. Coaching-wise, I'm giving the edge to Paul Maurice and the Jets here as well. He's been around forever, really. He's kind of like today's Pat Quinn. That's not to say that Jeff Ward could surprise some people with his strategies in the playoffs for Calgary. Now, moving on to players to watch for each of these teams. Starting off with Calgary, it's got to be Goudreau and Lindholm. There are two important cogs here. Mangiapane, who had a breakout season, he'll be playing in the top six. Look out for him. And Sam Bennett. No, I'm not crazy. Yeah, he had awful numbers point-wise this season, but he was a point per game in last year's playoffs. Don't forget that. The dark horse, I'm going to give it to Cam Talbot. If he can play like he did for Edmonton back, was it 4 years ago in the playoffs there, he's had a real good season with the Oilers too. He played most of the last half with a .919 save percentage. So that's a biggie. Now on the Winnipeg side of things, when it comes to players to watch, Cody Eakin. They acquired him during it seems to be like a rotating door English for centermen that they've had at that position over the last few seasons, the second line center. And I don't know if he's up for it. We'll see. We'll see how he meshes with that top six. And then I also threw in the whole Jets defense right here because can they prove that they can do what they've done during the regular season in the playoffs? I don't know. I even suggest maybe Maurice goes with 7D and then rotates like maybe Laine or Ehlers into the bottom six to help them with some of their depth scoring. Speaking of which, the dark horse I have here is Andrew Kopp, believe it or not. The third line winger had 5 assists in 6 games in last year's playoffs. Kind of like the only guy producing points in that bottom 6. You give him Ehlers or Laine, maybe you have some more magic there. Who do I think is going to win this series? I'm giving the edge to Winnipeg. Definitely. Calgary does have the potential to be a lot better, but yeah, I'm going with the Jets. Next up, Vancouver versus Minnesota. Starting with the goaltending, I'm giving the edge to Vancouver there. Markstrom had a great season. If he gets hurt, all bets are off, really. And Vancouver isn't exactly the best team defense out there. That's a bit of a weakness for them. Now, when it comes to defense, even though the Canucks have the offensively dynamic Quinn Hughes, you got to give it to Minnesota. They have one of the best top 4 at least in the league right now. They really make it easy on their goaltenders. Forward-wise, I'm definitely giving the edge here to Vancouver. We'll talk about more on that in a second. Special teams, this is an edge also for the Canucks as well. Their power play was 4th in the league. They're also better on the penalty kill as well. Coaching-wise, I'm actually going for on the Wild side of things here. See what I did there? with Dean Evanson, who took over from Bruce Boudreau. He was also his assistant back in the Washington days, and although this will be his first time as a head coach in the playoffs, he has a lot of playoff experience. as opposed to Green in Vancouver. This will be his first time coaching in the playoffs. So there's that. Yeah. Now, when it comes for players to watch for Vancouver, Besser. He's got to find that lethal shot again. Virtanen. He had a breakout year. Although during the last few weeks, I saw him down as an extra, not actually in the lineup, which confused me. You think he would be on that third line there. And when it comes to the dark horse, besides team defense, which they need to improve, I got to go with Ferland. He's coming off another concussion. He didn't play most of the year, but him and Virtanen could really help punch in a few goals and give their bottom six some more tenacity, especially the way he hits. Now on the Minnesota side of things, players to watch, Eriksson Ek. His line will be tasked with shutting down the Pettersson line. And then there's Zuccarello, who didn't have the greatest season this year during the regular season, but he was fantastic for Dallas in last year's playoffs. So look for magic to come from his figures. Now the dark horse, besides their goaltending, Dubnyk has been awful. Statlock has been okay. It's been good. Is Galchenyuk. I'm going to say it's him. His contract is done, and he actually looked decent for Minnesota in the few games he did play for them. At least more effective than he was for Pittsburgh or Arizona. And if he wants to make anywhere near the money he was, he's really got to come out of his shell and play like he did the first 3-4 seasons in Montreal. Who do I think is going to win this one? I got to give it to Vancouver here. But I do think there is an upset that's possible. If Markstrom gets hurt, all bets are off. And there might be a lot of desperate veterans on the Minnesota team who could make a difference. Stahl being one, for instance. But still going with the Canucks. Moving on, let's talk about Nashville versus Arizona. Starting with who has the edge in goal. That definitely is the Coyotes. Ranta and Kemper have just been fantastic all season. Defense-wise, that's all Nashville. Enough said there. Forward-wise, it's kind of split right now, but that could change more on that later. Special teams, that's Arizona. All Arizona. Actually, they're slightly better than Nashville on the power play and a lot better on the penalty kill. When it comes to coaching, I'm going to give it to Tocchet and the Coyotes. Tocchet has been in and around the league for quite a while now. And don't forget, he was an assistant with Pittsburgh when they faced off against Nashville, was it 2 or 3 seasons ago, in the finals. So he also knows the team pretty well. Now when it comes to players to watch, starting with the Predators, Duchesne had a really ho-hum kind of season so far. But remember, he played really well for Columbus in the playoffs last season. I think he was a point-per-game player. Arvidsson has really tallied off after a great season last season. He even played a lot of fourth-line minutes. You watch him play sometimes. He's really weak on the puck. He needs to step it up. Then there's Granlund, who basically has the physique for the playoffs. His contract is ending. Look out for him. Bonino always seems to pot in the right goals at the right time. Doesn't score a lot, but the 3rd/4th line center has a way to be dangerous. And then there's Watson, who I like him just as for the same reasons I like Cassian, that sandpaper kind of play, and he can score on occasion as well. For the dark horse for Nashville, besides the goaltending, because Rene's been awful all season, and Saros has been good, .914 save percentage, but I'm going to give it to Kyle Turris. Because ever since he arrived in Nashville, his play is just, has not been up to par. He's been playing a lot of 4th-line center, but look for them to play him on as a 2nd-line winger during this series, so he could be a big thing for them. When it comes to Arizona and their players to watch, Hall and Kessel, really, they both had off years, especially Kessel. But if they could just play to 80% of their potential, especially the way they do in the playoffs, This could really be a deciding factor for them over Nashville. I also threw Clayton Keller in here. He had 44 points this season. He's making $7 million a year now. As a center/winger, he has to prove himself. And a dark horse, I have a couple players here in Lawson Krause, former first-round pick. He's one of the leaders in the league when it comes to hits, and he's slowly coming around in terms of offense as well. I also have Jacob Chychrun down here too, the left shot defenseman, had 26 points for Arizona. He's kind of like their future leader when it comes to the D-corps. So I'm interested to see how he reacts in the playoffs. Who do I pick? I'm going with a slight upset here in Arizona. Obviously, all these games are going to be super tight, 2-1, 1-0, overtime, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's all Coyotes for me. I would love to hear from you and who you think is going to win each of these matchups down in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And hey, be kind to each other out there. And I'll see you soon.